Question 25a asks students for what are the principles of training. Key part to this question here would obviously be just the principles of training. Students need to be able to say what the principles of training were. The question was worth a total of 3 marks. There's a number of lines they need to fill. The thing that students need to emphasise here with this question, or this style of question with the word being what, no actual key term being used, is that students need to be able to complete this question in a bit of detail. We're not asking them to list. So it's not listing the principles of training down the page. It's being able to say the principle of training and then a little bit of an explanation that goes with it. What is it? So we've looked at an example of a sort of some very different styles of different ways of coming up with a general answer. First one here, we got what are the principles of training? The principles of training are training thresholds, variety, increased workload, specificity and reversibility. So straight away we've got a couple of wrong there. No explanation. Probably been very lucky to get a 2 out of 3 for that one there. We look at another response. What we'll see on this one is a little bit more detail, but also another 2 out of 3. Only been able to name the 3 of them, and you can see them up the top: specificity, reversibility, and overtraining. Overtraining, not really too sure on that one. Specificity, at least there's a little bit of an explanation and an example to go with it. Reversibility, explanation and example to go with it. Overtraining, incorrect. All right, but still more detail need to be given for all of the principles of training. We know the part of our syllabus where it comes from. It's right here. It says the principles of training: progressive overload, specificity, reversibility, variety, training thresholds, warm-up and cool-down. They're the 6 areas there for the principles of training that students need to include. All right, need to state them and give a short explanation. I was unable to find a very good response for this question. So this, from the marking guidelines, students will be able to see that when they look at it. In order to get 3 out of 3, progressive overload, an athlete working past their limits in ever-increasing small amounts. Specificity, specific to the muscle groups or energy systems being used. Reversibility, loss of training. Variety, different forms of training while maintaining specificity. Training thresholds, the minimum amount of work for improvements to occur. Warm up and cool down, prepare the body for an activity and allow it to recover at the end of a session. So it's actually been able to say what the principle of training is and a little bit of an outline or explanation that goes with it, not just listing down the page for a total of 3 out of 3. All right, some of the feedback from this question was that some students seem to have been confused by the nature of this question. In the HSC, words such as how, what and why can all be used in a question. In relation to this question, students really needed to say what the principles of training are. Most students were able to list or identify the principles of training, yet the question required a little more in terms of either what each of the principles do, which some candidates were able to do, which is very pleasing, or collectively, what is the role of employing these principles to training. Unfortunately, some students were confused with syllabus terminology outlining the types of training or types of practice, which wasn't what was being asked. As I showed you earlier on when we looked at the actual part of the syllabus that it related to, and it was the principles of training. So students just need to be aware of this, in the fact that they're going to get some how, what or why questions, and they're not just a list question down the page, but instead they're an explanation or an identifying sort of question. They need to be able to state it and give an explanation to go with it.